The Return, Chapter 14, Prisoner in Osaka. When a full 4 weeks had gone by in silence, Artam set out for the office where Saam worked. Despite all his promises and reassurances, Saam had not returned a single call. Artam had gone from pissed to incendiary somewhere in week 3. He could not believe that Saam, so sweetly genuine, so believable, was a using, manipulating little cock tease. He was owed, and he meant to claim what he was owed. He had imagined the entire scene in his head a dozen times. He planned to push the lying little fuck puppet across a desk and ream him, fuck him till he screamed. And if the people he worked with were there, including that arsehole Johnson, well, they were welcome to watch, as long as they kept out of his way. He ran up the stairs and barged his shoulder against a heavy glass door, which in theory needed a card key to open it. He was inside in seconds. He didn't see anyone he recognized, no Johnson. But then he noticed the little Japanese man away in a corner, looking panic-stricken. Artam grinned. Perhaps he would have that little fucker for dessert. The atmosphere in the room was strange. The handful of people there looked anxious, tired, dishevelled, like they'd been sleeping there. There were empty takeaway food boxes in a shambolic pile, and a faint smell of unwashed clothes. He looked around to see who was in charge. An older woman, skinny and pale, came towards him. He glowered at her. Perhaps he would do her a favour too when this was over. The rage in his chest made him want to punch her, but instead he said, "I'm looking for Summerin." 2 of the men exchanged side glances, and the blonde girl was crying softly. "Hello, I'm Maggie. You're Artam, aren't you? Summeren's friend." He paused. Saam had called him that only once. He wasn't sure how to react. "Can I make you some tea?" Artam roared. "No, I don't want any fucking tea. I want to know where Saam is." The old woman blinked a little, but stood her ground. "I can see that you're upset, but please don't swear at me." Surprised by her politeness, he took a beat before rallying his anger and yelling, "I want to know where he is." She put a gentle hand on his arm. "I'm sorry, Artam, but we don't know." The blonde girl, Sally, eyes on her computer screen, said, "Oh," and started crying loudly, hiccuping her misery, blubbering. "Another one. Why are these bastards doing this? I can't do this anymore. I just can't bear it." Johnson came in then, looked sideways at Artam, but barely reacted. "Sally, listen, I'm sorry, but we are expecting a call. You know that, right? I understand how you feel, but I need you to be quiet right now. I'm sorry." Johnson cursed himself. Saam was so much better at this. An old-fashioned phone rang on Maggie's desk and all noise stopped. He nodded to Maggie, who pressed a button to answer the call, switched it to speaker. She put her finger on her lips and gently manoeuvred Artam into the chair behind him, hoping it would take his weight. A hush fell over the room. Artam saw with some surprise that Maggie's hand was on his shoulder, in what was clearly meant as a comforting gesture. What the fuck was happening? "Hello, Agent Johnson." A cultured voice came over the speaker. "Thank you for returning my call, Consul Karras." "How polite. One might almost think you understood what you were saying. It's a pleasure to use this quaint equipment. Is there something I can do for you?" "It's about Summerin. You might remember he tried to render assistance to your—" Karras said, "I remember." What he meant was, "Move along." "I'm calling to ask for your help." "Go on." We're looking for him. He was on retrieval in Osaka. You weren't with him? No, I was on leave. Silence. My child was sick. A son? Does that make a difference? A pause. Not to you, perhaps. Saam went with 2 other agents. None of them have returned, and it has been more than 3 weeks now. Artam's blood ran cold. Could Saam be dead? Could he have spent the last 3 weeks fantasizing his revenge on... No, it couldn't be true. The Hanath was talking. His comms? We think it was cut from his face. Keris paused. Why would you think that? Whoever has him has been posting pictures of him online every day. Soon after we lost him, the site posted a photo of him where his face had been cut, slashed, and his comms went offline. Sally put a hand over her mouth and stifled a wail. Keris considered. Send me what I need to view this for myself. Of course. Silence. Are they clear shots? Sir? I am interested in the collar. Sally, tear-stained, shook her head. Find me some close-ups of the collar. Then perhaps I can help. The line went dead. Sally was wiping her face with the heel of her hand and trembling. I don't understand. Why is the collar so important? Johnson looked at Artam, who said, He wears a status collar. It's not jewelry. I don't... He looked at the blubbering Sally. Suppose I own you. He took a moment to enjoy her horrified expression. Your collar identifies me and my status. It protects you from anyone with status lower than mine. Of course, if someone who outranks me wants to fuck you. He shrugged. Sally turned pale. They're expensive. It's a form of taxation. Even nobles would only buy them for slaves that mattered to them, slaves they wanted to protect. The most expensive ones had trackers in. If you see the collar, you know the code. Saam has that kind of collar. What do you think? Roxy said, I'm on it, and ran to her office. Artam stood over Sally. Show me these pictures. Then he added, Stop crying, and waited till she complied. Can anyone see these? No, you have to pay a fee each time, a hefty fee. They're making money out of sharing them. Bastards, muttered Maggie softly under her breath. The early shots under a heading of Golden Boy showed Saam at his glorious best, beautiful. Then came 2 shots side by side, one a day after the other, less golden. They cut his hair. It was shocking. He could see Otaku snivelling silently, wiping his nose on the back of his hand. Tim said, Why did they darken his hair? It's not like they can disguise him. It's not dye, it's dirt. Tim looked stricken. He would hate that. Then, day by day, the pictures documented his decline. The white T-shirt became filthy, then disappeared altogether, on the same day that his hair was sheared. His face and body became dirtier as the days progressed. A deep slash appeared in one cheek where the comms device had been ripped out. Bruises accumulated on his face. A split lip appeared, then disappeared as he began to heal. In early shots he showed defiance, then patience. Later he seemed tired, but he was waiting, confident he would be found. He started to lose weight drastically, and he looked very cold. The skin of his face became paler, almost grey, and he looked very ill. We think they started drugging him here. His eyes were too wide open, and he looked confused. In later pictures he began to look as though he had lost hope. And then, quite close to the end, he started to look afraid. When he saw the pictures where Saam finally dropped his eyes, Artam raged. Matt was between him and the computer. Please, please, don't break the equipment. We need it to find him. Roxy arrived with the clearest shots she could find and showed them to Artam. Any good? Artam looked. Not enough detail. He shook his head. Sally started wailing. Keris looked at the shots of his sister's beautiful boy. Samran's decline was disconcerting. A young man was waiting outside his office to speak to him, a Hanath noble like himself, but much younger, a newcomer. As he came in, Keris noted that he was perhaps rather thin, but more shockingly, where was his braid? He was very dirty, but had asked permission to speak with the consul at once, not wishing to delay, to waste any time on becoming clean. Tor shared his full family name and was invited to sit. Tor hesitated. The chair was pristine and he was not. Keris made an impatient gesture and the younger man sat. He accepted a glass of water and drank it greedily. Then he asked for another. The consul said shortly, "What happened?" "I was in Japan. My father sent me here to look for my older brother." Keris nodded, silently acknowledging the importance of tracking down an eldest son. "I was taken. I don't know by whom. They cut my hair." It was a shaming confession. "After 2 days, a team came for me. I half expected some of our people, but it was 2 humans and a Kerip." He laughed a little. That was a funny story from his point of view. "They came for me because they thought I was one of theirs." He shrugged. "They were caught. The 2 humans were killed at once, but not the Kerip. Him they just gave a beating to and threw him in the room where I was kept, a filthy cellar. They took him out to beat him most days. They seemed to take pleasure in it. He told me they asked him no questions. He was a tough little bastard. I would not have enjoyed the punishment they gave him. They took 1 picture of me at the start, for ransom purposes I assumed at the time, but him they photographed every day. I don't know why. I got the impression, he wasn't forthcoming about it, but I got the impression that they raped him more than once, and made video recordings of that and the beatings." He paused before moving on. "What little food they gave us was all flesh, and even when he tried to eat, it made him very sick. So I ate the food, and he drank all the water they gave us." He fended off imagined criticism with one raised hand. His idea, he suggested we might survive longer that way. Keris nodded. It was a good decision. He got weak very fast. When I found a way out and there was a chance of escape, I took it. He was too far gone to walk, and I couldn't carry him. Silence. So I left him. Silence. He fidgeted. He was very weak. There's a chance that even if he were rescued now, he might not recover. He paused. "Well, you would hardly expect me to risk the life of my father's only remaining son for someone else's used-up body slave, would you?" Keris considered. Looked at the young man's face, evaluating. Was that Tor's honest opinion, or was he trying to provoke a reaction? He said slowly, "No, I would not expect that of you." Another pause, then, "So why are you here?" "Well, he did render a service, or at least try to." "You expect me to go and look for this used-up body slave?" "Not expect. Hope." The young man coloured a little and raised his chin, waiting to see if he would be shamed for his soft-heartedness. So here was the reason for the crass comment. He was expecting to be judged for wanting to save a broken Kerip. "How do you expect us to find him?" Tor showed some enthusiasm. When I escaped, I took a phone from a human to alert the rescue team. They will have my location. He was walking distance from there 12 hours ago." "Did you see the collar?" "It was a good collar." He knew the carrot belonged to someone in Keris's family, but was too discreet to say so. "Did you by any chance see the tracker code?" The young man grinned and gave him the code. He went personally, took a half-dozen of his hardest men, cleaned out the rat's nest without troubling to discuss it with the rats, cleaned it out and burned it down. They found the carrot curled up asleep in a disgusting cellar. He winced a little at the smell, but lifted him easily in his arms. He recalled the robustly healthy man he had met at the hospital, who had taken down one of his guards with a knife no wider than a finger. His beautiful hair was gone, his colour was dreadful, his face almost unrecognizable. How many of those delicate carrot bones had been broken by the beatings they gave him? There was so little of him left. Keris doubted he would survive. What a shame. Behind him he could hear his men, quietly and efficiently, eliminating the humans who had taken him. And, he told himself in quiet justification, laid hands on a Hanath noble. Samran's eyes flickered open. His pupils were huge. Zephyr. He actually smiled and touched Keris's mouth gently with his filthy fingertips. An appalling familiarity. Keris could not remember the last time anyone had touched him like that. Anything less than delirium would have been no excuse. He knew he looked like her. He had been told often enough, but he was still surprised. Keris had not heard his sister's name in 20 years. It was a Hanath tradition not to speak the name of those who died by violence. Zephyr had been the nickname she used with him, her brother, and apparently with this boy. "She must have been very fond of you, Saam the carrot," he said. How sentimental, he thought, blinking as his eyes misted for a moment. He held the carrot gently against his chest and made his way to the lander, while his men firebombed the house.